How are we doing? A lot of smiling faces out there. I like that. Well, I like small business owners. We wake up every day ready to take it on. So this is a good thing. I would like to welcome you to the DCSBDC Small Business Network. This is a small business tune-up for 2018. We do this every year. We are happy to help, happy to be of assistance. First off, I would like for everyone given an opportunity to please connect with us on social media. That would be DCSBDC. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. It's one of the best and easiest ways to get updates on what's going on with the network, access resources, connect with us, ask questions. We all know what social media is nowadays, so please connect. Right, so today we're having a panel on banking. I am a former small business owner. Currently, I am the director of the Entrepreneurship Center at Greater Washington Urban League, the DCSBDC network. We do a lot of the same things there as well. But like I said, this panel is on banking. It's a very arduous process to see a banker. We need have a lot of questions that need to be answered. We're unsure of how we go about making that relationship work for our business. So right now we're having a distinguished panel. I would like to give them time to introduce themselves. We'll start right here with Jim.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
My name is Alexander Hollingsworth. I'm the founder and principal of Ascendant Business Consulting. We are a consulting firm that helps businesses link up with different financial institutions, micro-lending financial institutions, as well as teach you how to find the bank that would work best for you. I'm a former banker of 15 years at some of the larger institutions, and I figured that working with all the different businesses that I did, there was a niche because so many folks didn't know exactly what to look for in a bank, and sometimes your expectations didn't line up with what the bank could actually provide. And so my company helps to partner you with different institutions.
Hello, everybody. I'm Justin Wilson. I'm with TD Bank. I am a small business relationship manager and vice president for the local area. I work with small businesses from about $1 million to about $20 million, meet their lending needs, meet their deposit needs, and also connect them to services that they might not know that are available, but may help them with fraud risks, with saving time, and also support the community by doing a lot of financial literacy education.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Brian Selver. I'm a assistant vice president with City National Bank, which about 3 months ago to the day we moved into DuPont Circle at 20th and M as part of the DC expansion. So I was with a large regional bank also in the DC area for 6 years, and then followed a mentor of mine to kind of start our own franchise for City National, which is based in Los Angeles. And my position with the bank is as a personal and business banker. So the aim there and the interest for me was being able to marry the businesses that business owners are managing and the families that they're helping run at the same time.
Good morning. My name is Emmy Reyes. I am with the Latino Economic Development Center, which is a nonprofit located at WeWork just down the street over by the Shaw Metro Station. And we've been in the area since 1991, and we work with everyone, not just Latinos. But we sort of have two departments, a housing department, and then a small business coaching and small business loans. I am a small business loan officer, so I've been working with people here in DC as well as Maryland and Virginia, distributing small business loans.
Good morning, everybody. Theo Pajianes with Catapult Business Development. We work with small and medium-sized businesses to help them build capacity, scale, and grow. One of the key components is access to financing. The other side is to find commercial and government contracts to create predictable revenue and diversify client base. You don't want any obstacles, so that's why we help find financing as well for that growth. So happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for being part of the panel. It's very much appreciated. We have a series of questions we'd like to ask first of these panelists, and then we'll open it up to Q&A so you guys can interact with them. So the first question is, what is a suggested approach to choosing a banker, and what should the criteria be? Anybody just hop on in, grab the mic, and pass it along.
I think this is your subject, sir.
Oh man, choosing a banker. So honestly, it's like choosing a partner. It really is. And so the idea is every bank and then every banker that works for the bank they don't do the same thing. So you may be looking for a specific niche or a specific type of line of credit or a particular deposit service. Every bank may not offer that, and so you walk into a Bank of America or SunTrust or a Wells, and you think, well, I can get this product or service anywhere. And the idea is that you might not be able to get what you need there. And so you really need to vet the financial institutions that you're working with. You save yourself a lot of time and heartache by meeting with them, asking if they can refer some of their other clients to you so you can understand how they work, and really going in and just vetting the place. You may add a month or two on to your normal loan setup or account opening process, but it saves you a lot of heartache on the back end if you know exactly what you're walking into. And what I would also suggest is when you do find a banker that works well for your company, is that you find out what kind of support they have within their bank organization. Because if that banker is out and nobody else knows your business or your products or your services, you could be waiting weeks until that person comes back from vacation or back from wherever it is that they are. So I would just say putting as much time in the upfront process as possible and asking, can you talk to their existing clients?
Just to add a bit to that, this will not be a TD Bank push. So I think one of the things that I try to do, and one of the reasons why I'm a proud part of the millennial generation, is because we all like to spend our money at places that share our values, right? I think cost-benefit analysis and that kind of thing is great and very needed, but also finding an organization that matches the values that you have, that you can be proud to say, I bank there, I partner with these people, is a huge part of the search as well. And used to be very hard to kind of find out some of that information, but it's very easy now. There's a lot of social conversations on the TD Bank website, the PNC website. A lot of great things that banks are doing to improve the communities that they're in. We're also gauged to ensure that we improve the communities that we service through the CRA, the Community Reinvestment Act. So very much also align yourself with an organization that shares the values that you have.
And on top of that, I've become a big believer of the idea of networking, and I know that's kind of a cliche word. People kind of cringe when they hear it, but when it comes to banking, I think of networking as if you are a small business owner or thinking of doing that yourself, and you have a neighbor or a good friend or a family member that also is a small business owner who has a banker and would have an accountant and an attorney, leveraging your network like that to ask them who they work with and who they trust, because as much as every banker would say that they try to treat everybody the same and are equally responsive to everybody, I'm a big believer in just the natural human tendency of really getting excited about working with people that you know and that you trust. So in order to, I think, get the best possible outcome and responsiveness and level of attention that each person here deserves, if you have a trusted mentor or peer who has somebody that they can recommend strongly, I think that would be the first place to start, because I know I get jacked up if my favorite client or my favorite referral partner introduces me to somebody because I know it comes from a trusted and enthusiastic source. I'm that much more likely to connect with that person, and I expect it to be similar from your perspective as well.
And as a follow-up question, as a small business owner, how would I go about researching a bank? You mentioned that finding a bank might add a few months to the search. And so, what would that process look like? Am I on the website? Am I checking out social reviews? Like, what am I doing to make sure the bank I'm looking for is a good fit?
So you can go online, right? But when you go online, you're always going to find all the negative, which is good because you do want to know what different banks and different bankers are doing, good and bad. But whenever you go online, you're just always going to find the most negative stuff. What I would advise is you go to a local branch and ask, do they have a business banker within their area? And ask, can you meet with that business banker? And at that point, you start to gauge how engaged that banker is and if they fit what you're trying to accomplish. And if you start to believe that it is a good fit, you can ask that banker, are there one or two clients that I can speak with? Because usually the clients that they will recommend to you can really tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly, and it's good hearing it directly from a source versus someone that's posted something on Twitter or something like that. So I just recommend doing your homework online, but definitely then just going into a local branch and asking, do they have a business banker that supports the area? And then going from there.
To add to that, I would say use some trusted third-party sources, right? So great sources, JD Power. JD Power and Associates does a quarterly review of banks, and they are extremely thorough. Money Magazine publishes best banks list every year. Scene & Money does the same. To be truthful, I think there's a lot of money that flows from the banks to some of the third-party sources that gauge them as well. So be aware of that. JD Power, I don't think that's totally the case. I think a lot of that is reviews from actual customers. But I would lean on third-party sources, and also, like, you know, on the same point to him. If your best friend, co-owner, business partner, associate has had a good experience somewhere on the personal side of things, and they actually have a connection with a banker, firsthand knowledge of what that banker does is much more important than anything that's posted online, right?
Sorry, I just wanted to add that I think in DC you really don't need to do it on your own. There are organizations like mine, LEDC, his, you know, there's a lot of different resources, the people that are sponsoring this event as well. So the research is something that you can definitely do on your own, but I think you also have plenty of resources in DC to take advantage of that do a lot of that research and do that on a day-to-day basis.
One thing to add, so I was in commercial banking or financing over 10 years and come from a family small business. So one of the things that I would see over and over again was what kind of questions was I being asked, or what questions would I ask client or potential business owners. So it's like dating. You know, if they're pushing towards, like, pushing a product or towards a sale or a close or a product du jour, maybe pump the brakes, right? But if they're asking questions to really deep dive and get to know you, your business, your goals, what you're all about, your short, medium, long-term goals, different dialogue. So, you know, you want to methodically, and then have relationships with small, medium, and large banks, and then have, you know, strong relationships with each of them and close ties with your banker. And then what happens is you end up, you know, having that competition drives price and service. You can get better pricing, you can get better quality service, and you're figuring it out along the way. And then if somebody falls off, replace them. So it's like dating. So nobody's jumping into getting married tomorrow, you know, and having kids and all that. So you wanna take your step by step.
Oh, should I check in with my banker? Should this be an ongoing deal at some sort of frequency every 4 or 5 months? Come into the bank, sit down, kind of let them know where I'm at, what could be coming down the pipeline possibly in the next 6 to 8 months? Is that something I should do as a small business owner?
Really quick, yeah, absolutely. So the planning component is critical. Bring in your, I picked up this acronym the other day, have bail ready. Your banker, your accountant, your insurance, and your lawyer. Have dialogues with them regularly, like maybe every once a quarter, at least twice a year. Your accountant should be monthly, but the banker is a critical component at the end of the year, December, January, February. Before you close out your books, talk to your business owner, talk to the banker, find out what your books need, your number needs to look like to get the bank money that you need. I can elaborate on that later. But.
And so now that I've checked out JD Power and I've gone to websites and a lot of other places, what do I need for this initial meeting for my banker? What do I need so this can be fruitful?
So I definitely want to answer that question, but to go back to the last one, I'm not sure the onus should be on the business owner to check in either, right? Like, business owners are our customers, right? So, you know, we have a ton of them as well. But if you're not getting checked in and you're having to do the checking in every time, might be time to find another banker. Oh, and to answer the last, the new question, I would say totally knowledge, right? If you're not cash flowing yet, probably a business plan. But if you are cash flowing and you can't speak, did I turn this thing on?
I think you did.
I did. And I can't speak to my revenue numbers, my, you know, asset size numbers, my plan to go to new markets, my plan to expand, my plan to scale, that banker's not going to have a great view of you, right? Knowledge for how your business is doing, and if it's not actually full bore yet a business plan, but I say number one, knowledge.
To kind of go back a bit as well, so a relationship takes two folks, right? And so I can't tell you when I was a banker how often I'd meet with a client and we'd have an initial great meeting. We'd outline, we're going to meet 4 times a year, once a quarter. And in between, I'd call that client once a month just to check in. But we all have cell phones, right? You get a text message, you kind of ignore it. And so I can't tell you how many business clients I would follow up with based on what we had outlined originally, and they just ignored my calls. And then all of a sudden they get a big contract, right? And they don't have the capacity to manage that contract, and then they need a line of credit. And I'm saying, well, did you get my 15 calls, the 15 messages, my emails? You ignored me, right? And so it goes both ways. We're all human beings. You be respectful, and if someone's calling you too much, say, well, maybe we need to outline what our original, need to change what our original outline was. But also when you go into your meeting with your banker, you do want to have your financials prepared, or as recent financials as you have available. So whether it be tax returns, whether it be a business debt schedule, it might be your accounts payable, accounts receivables, income statement. I mean, you want to have your financials ready, because meeting with the banker and then him or her telling you they need these things, and then you going back to try to produce them from your CPA or your in-house accountant or whatever it may be, that adds a lot of lag time onto whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. So just trying to be prepared, I think, would go a long way on both ends.
Are there any don'ts? As a small business owner, I'm going to see my banker. What are some things I should definitely not do, definitely not bring, definitely not say?
I'll try to keep this on the positive and not the negative side. I would say one big way to derail the conversation and just to diminish the experience that you'll have with your banker, especially if you're just getting to know somebody new, is to fail to simplify the business plan and how your company either is making money or plans to make money. Because one big thing to understand that only a banker would truly know how it works is that we, the people on the front lines, we need to become your advocate, or if the business is going to be applying for a loan down the road. That's the assumption here. If you are, then the banker out in the field, in your local branch, one of us, we're the ones that have to become your cheerleaders in order to go back to either a committee or our manager or our credit officer, whoever ultimately has the pen that can approve a deal or not, depending on the size, depending on what you're looking for. We need to be able to understand it. We as the banker will never be as expert or proficient in your industry. And the flip side, we don't expect you guys to understand or have an understanding coming in of all the nitty-gritty bank jargon that we employ. But if we are going to successfully advocate for you and be your voice within the company, if it's easy for you to explain how you're going to make money and how you're going to make this business work and how you're going to differentiate from the competition, then it just gives us the ammunition we need to more effectively kind of pass that information along. So I would say if it's possible to simplify and just bring a clear, concise message of how you're going to run the business, that's the way to go. And then I guess to your question of what not to do, the opposite. And be meandering, that just makes it harder for us to advocate on your behalf.
The other thing I would recommend is transparency from both sides, right? Understand what the bank process is going to look like, for a loan or what that engagement is, but also whatever the history is, if there were some hiccups along the way, coming out, and I think all of us have seen coming out of 08, 09, and 10 financial turmoil, there's a lot of hiccups and scars left over from that. So lead with tackling those head on, in those two, not letting them be found at the closing or the day before a closing, right? There was a foreclosure or a short sale or something from 10 years ago. These things take a long time, depending on the bank. They're difficult to navigate. So depending on what the situation is, tackle the challenges up front, and then create a game plan so that you can expedite the process. So that way it's not a surprise later at the end. And if everything's rosy and peachy, then you're completely transparent with that as well, and then you help push and work with the bankers to be your advocates. I like that a lot. That bankers are the advocates for you to get the deals done. So full transparency on both sides is important.
So I'm going to give you guys two. One that's going to sound very much like a banker. One that's going to sound very much like I'm not a banker. So the one is, don't go in thinking that you know as well. Like, I have so many customers that come in and say, all right, I know how this loan's going to go. You guys are just going to lend me money against my business. And so, like, what documents do you need for the business, right? And then it goes a totally different way, right? Because if you lend, you have lending requirements. And a lot of times, lending requirements is recourse, right? So you have to guarantee it. Sometimes we'll require another guarantor, and customers always give kickback. Well, my business is X, Y, and Z. You guys shouldn't need to do that. So I think that the short answer is, don't not be flexible, because the banker wants to get you the money as much as you want the money. And they are going to, give you a plan ahead. And I think the biggest problem some small business owners have is that they think they already know the process so much ahead of time that they're unwilling to take this loan that's going to end up creating positives for the business just because they don't think that they should have to follow the plan that's ahead of them. The second one is, don't think that you're not interviewing the banker as much as the banker's interviewing you, right? So you need to go into every meeting with the banker totally empowered, because you are the customer. You are the one that is going to be the one that makes us money. So that was my non-banker one, if that wasn't clear.
All right, now that I've found my bank, we've established a relationship, we're into it about a year now. How often should I evaluate my banker? And then what questions should I be asking myself about that evaluation?
It's a fair question. I would say I don't immediately think of X number of months or years. I would say on an ongoing basis, again, try to take the banker hat off. I'm a firm believer that in anything where you're the client and you have a service provider, if at any point you're not feeling the love, whatever that looks or feels like to you, then that's not right. If there's a reason, if there are regulations or there are guidelines the bank has to stick to, and that's been the challenge, then that's something you can talk out. But in terms of service and responsiveness and attention to detail, really at any point, whether it's meeting one or several years into a relationship, the most common feedback I get if I'm interviewing a potential new client and they're interviewing me, the most common by far criticism that I hear of the banking relationship they have, because everybody already has a bank, if they're an existing business, is that they just don't feel the love, or they don't feel valued in the same way that every new client coming in the door. Banks often will advertise, you see it on all of our branch windows, that this rate or this promotion for all new clients, and I believe it's our job to ensure that every long-standing existing client feels that way as well, that they're valued, because there's a ton of competition. I work downtown in DuPont Circle. If you go 2 blocks, there's 5 other banks, and I don't think we deserve to work with a client if we're not making them feel new and valued every step of the way.
I would say that annually you should be evaluating your banking relationship. Here's a secret: every bank annually evaluates your relationship, okay, and determines if you should remain with that banker, determines if you should go to a division that's not so nice, determines if you should go to the branches, okay? So annually you need to be doing the same thing. But January through December, you need to be, now that I'm not a banker, I'll say this, you need to be talking to other banks as well, right? So I used to have Verizon cable, and Comcast would send me stuff all the time, AT&T would send me stuff, and I didn't finally switch until I got pissed off at Verizon. But it was like 3 years later, right? So all this time I could have been figuring out if there was a better option for me, and I just ignored it because I was being lazy or I was tied up with other things. The banking world is the same way. You should know other bankers. And that doesn't mean you're going to move your relationship just because you meet another banker, but moving a business banking relationship is tedious, it's cumbersome, and it's not easy. It's easy to close out your personal accounts and go somewhere else, or refinance a personal loan somewhere else. Doing all that with the business takes months. And so you should have advocates at other banks that kind of have a general idea of your business that you've met with maybe 3 months prior, a year prior, whatever it is, that kind of know you already, so that if it comes to a point where your existing relationship is not working, you're not starting all the way over, that you already have some advocates at other institutions.
I made a list. So when your needs change as a business, you should follow up with your banker. When you see major financial regulations coming through CNN.com or on your TV, whatever, if you watch the other news sources, that's fine. When you see major financial regulations, meet your banker. When rates change, quickly meet your banker. When there's ownership structural changes in the organization that you're running, meet your banker. When money concerns are keeping you up at night, meet your banker.
Thank you, guys. Can we talk about the 5 C's of being bank ready for small business owners?
Character is going to look at basically your credit score, any other types of things, based upon your history, capacity, the economic conditions of today, collateral, and then the last C, I always forget the last C, capital. That's right. How much cash you're bringing to the table, how much skin is in the game. These are the basic criterias that where a banker is going to start and kind of branch off and dive deep between, deeper into each of them. I lead with character because I think that one that's come up over and over. The current conditions, economic cycle right now, we've been in a pretty strong economic cycle. I think it's an opportune time to pursue more, get access to capital, but rates could, it could change at any time. So, those 5, if you want to dive into some
others. The one that I would definitely lean on most, and I don't know if it's because of like my bank's priorities, but capacity / cash flow, however you want to name that one. Character is number one, right? We have to be able to pull credit and feel comfortable with the loan and be sure that the business owner their intentions are to pay this money back, right? But cash flow is the thing that is the hardest sometimes for us to get over, because we could have this amazing small business owner in front of us, right, that has this awesome idea, and they just say, look, if you just give me this money, I know that I can make a lot more money. And we have to say no sometimes, and it's because we don't want to make loans that are going to get you in trouble, right, as a small business owner. So that's the calculations that I spend more time beating my head against my desk, saying, God, all right, underwriter, just look, I know we can do this. This person's going to make a ton of money from this. Can we do it? Their character's great, idea's great. Underwriter says no because they can't afford it, and I have to take a step back sometimes and say, look, I'm gonna be putting this customer in a worse position by doing this loan, even though I am their lead advocate. So if character's number one, I would say cash flow is by far number 2.
And I'll speak to one of the other C's, which is collateral. And the only thing I wanted to mention is I'm working with a very interesting and exciting but difficult case right now where client is looking for a large loan to continue funding aggressive expansion in the market. So they have not yet been able to cash flow positive because for the 4 or 5 years they've been in business, they've just been growing, pouring all of their money and resources and time into the business. So they're just kind of ahead over their skis a little bit. So the cash flow isn't there. So my team, trying to be creative, wanting to work with them because we think it's such a grand slam idea. We have the latest is we're proposing a collateral structure saying you have some assets outside the business. Here's one way we think we might be able to deliver what you want in the absence of positive cash flow. So again, this is how the bank can get security that will be paid back even if there's a downturn or the company were to go sideways, which we don't think is going to happen, but we do have to, as bankers, think about what the worst case scenario would be. And it seemed extreme because they said, look, they're saying we have this wonderful business. You've seen all these positive signs. You know, we're not arguing that it's going to go down. We all think it's going to go up. And then where we're at now, the message that it's important for your banker to convey up front is that the collateral requirements, if they seem steep, if you're in a position where you're looking for a large business loan to take it to the next level, collateral requirements don't have to be permanent. They do have to be documented, so it's not just on a whim or a handshake that we could change or diminish the collateral requirements down the road. But with this large client we've been talking about, look, you're not cash flow positive right now because you've been aggressively growing, but you say that you plan to kind of tone it down and bank on what you've got right now, and you expect to be cash flow positive soon. If you hit these standards, and we're planning to put them on paper so there's no gray area, if you can hit these benchmarks, then we, in turn, would be interested and open to releasing this collateral, requiring you to keep less money in the bank, for example, or we may not need to put a lien on as many assets of yours in the future. And that's because, ultimately, the bank is not in the business of playing repo man. We're not good at liquidating companies. That's not what any banker wants to do. It's not a profitable arm of the bank. It's more just worst case scenario. It does happen, the 1 in 100 case where a loan doesn't perform well, but that's definitely not in our best interest or the client's best interest. So I like Justin's point that part of our job is to gauge whether this truly would be helpful or creating more risk for the client than it's worth.
Cash flow is king, and if cash flow is not there, there's sometimes ways to mitigate that risk. But character is something that doesn't get talked about enough. So normally you'll meet with the banker and you're talking about all the financial stuff. But character, as a banker, we have to do something called a white sheet, which is essentially a resume on you and your company. And so if you had a bankruptcy in the past and you don't tell your banker, that's a character issue. And it doesn't mean that you didn't pay your bills. Maybe there was a medical issue that caused that, right? If there was a rough divorce that caused financial havoc in your life. These are things that you want your banker to know so they can put in their write-up and then come up with risk to come up with options to mitigate that risk. Are you really an expert, or do you have the education in the field that your company is in? Are you the head of HUD, but you're a surgeon? That doesn't make sense. It's a character issue, right? I mean, that doesn't make sense. So, I'm not the smartest man in the world, but so those are character issues. As Stacy said earlier with the graphic design, are you certified? Is your education? Did you work for a company and did that job for a number of years? These are all character issues that if you omit or you exaggerate, those can be reasons that your loan request or your banking relationship is declined, even though financially you and your business can support it. So you want to keep those things in mind.
Just to add just a bit of this, I want to add a bit of hyperbole. I'm not going to say the name of the organization that I'm talking about, but it may not hurt as a business owner for you every now and then to Google the name of your business, because sometimes the name alone can add a problem with character. So I was working with an organization here in DC. They had never worked outside of DC, but we do background checks, right? When we did a background check, there's sometimes it kind of cross searches the name, the address, the sponsor's name, everything. And so a similar organization with a similar name in New York had filed bankruptcy, had lost collateral, had done all these terrible things, and actually did them intentionally as almost basically a fraud case. And it slowed us down for about 3 weeks because we had to show over and over and over and over and over and over again that this was not the same organization, right? So be aware of what, if you are A&B Services and you are filing in DC, be aware of what A&B Services in New York might be doing or in South Carolina might be doing, right? Because, rebranding's always fun too. Where was our original presenter today? I bet she loves rebranding, right?
Thank you very much. Next question. How soon before the need for capital should a small business owner prepare for bank funding?
From day one. From day one. Not wait until Do not wait until you get that contract or you want to buy that building and walk in and think just because you can get a personal loan online in 24 hours that you're going to walk into a bank and get that financing in 24 hours. Usually for a building, it can take 6 months sometimes to get financing, just depending on the situation. But normally it takes at least 30 days. And for lines of credits, it can take 2 weeks plus to get it. And so even if you don't need the capital right now from a financing option, you should be preparing your business every single day, every month that you work with your CPA, as if you do need to go to a bank and get that financing. Do not wait until you need it at that moment, because when you need it is when you will not get it.
So I'm curious, how many small business owners or prospective small business owners are in the room right now? How many of you guys at some point expect to need financing or have already gotten financing? How many of you have business partners? Have you seen any of those business partners' credit scores? I suggest you do that. So, I mean, essentially, anytime that you need financing up to, you know, until you're at like huge revenue numbers, 50 million in the revenue numbers, you're going to have to personally guarantee any finance that you do. And so will your business partners. If it's over 10% normally, that business partner is going to have to co-sign too. And if you don't know what we're going to see when we pull the credit scores on the business partner, you might as well not know your revenue numbers, right? So that is my only thing of being prepared for financing is, you know, anything that has to do with your business, about your livelihood, you need to know it. And if people co-own assets with you, that you may have to be lent against, you better know everything about that person.
We go down the line here. I'll put a quick plug for traditional banks that we represent in general, and I'm not here to rage against the online alternatives, because there's a time and a place, I think, for all of them and all of us. But I would say just a little bit of insight that, generally speaking, I've found that traditional banks, like a City National, like a TD, are going to be able to offer oftentimes the most competitive terms and or pricing for small business owners if you can qualify. And the reason that is, or one of the reasons that is because of all the enhanced due diligence and the background checks and credit reporting that the banks do. That's why it can take multiple weeks sometimes just to get concrete feedback. So if you're in a position where A, you are looking to borrow money for your business, B, you don't need to pay for a contract tomorrow, and you have a little bit of time to do that little dance with us, then oftentimes a bank will offer the best deal for you. The flip side, as I've come to understand it, is some online lenders might promise a quicker turnaround time. They might promise more money than maybe your banker is offering. But the flip side to that is it may often be more expensive, and it may often come without the person on the ground to be your advocate for the next go around. So it could just be a little bit more disjointed. In the future, again, you might be a business owner where you need this one event taken care of, and then you might never really think you need a banker again, in which case that might be the best way to go. But I think that's one differentiator for a traditional bank. If you have the time and the means to develop a true relationship, those are some of the benefits, I think, in the long run that could be available.
Just really quickly, it's all about risk and mitigating risk. So small business owners that start, for all the businesses that start, 1 in 10 make it 5 years. And of those 1 in 10 that make it, only 1 in 10 make it another 5 years. Main reason is due to burnout. So right there, you're looking at essentially 1% making it 10 years. What does that mean? That translates to higher risk. So we're working with the bank. The goal that they're trying to accomplish and achieve with you as a business owner is to mitigate and reduce that risk. So the moment that you go through and jump through all the hoops and have that bank financing, think of it as designer shoes or bag or something showing the world that someone else has vetted your company and invested in your company. Bank financing is very similar to taking investment from one of the sharks or Mark Cuban. They're looking at it the same way. The thing about bank financing is it's the cheapest financing there is available. If you don't prepare for it, what is the alternative? You hit a contract, right? Let's say gross margins are 25%. You know, the alternative funding sources can charge 18 to 20, 22, 24. I'm helping someone get out of a 30% rate. All the margin's gone. It's not sustainable. When you're looking at bank financing, you're looking something closer to 4, 6, 7, 8, depending on what it is, right? So if your margins will still stay healthy. Not preparing for it or having your financials look strong enough and having all the 5 C's line up, your alternative means who are you working for? Yourself or the funding source so you can do the work? So that requires a tremendous amount of planning and foresight and say, I need my bank to be my biggest advocate and partner in staying away from the alternative funding sources.
I just want to add, I think of my role as helping certain startups and some small business owners as being bank ready. One of the things we do is sort of lend to the unlendable. So we have startups that don't have 2 years of cash flow history, or business owners who have bad credit history or no credit history at all. And one of the things that our organization does is credit builder loans. So we do loans not necessarily because you need the funds, but to help you to start establish or repair your credit score as it is. So further down the line, when these contracts do start coming down, you are ready for these bigger loans. So I think it's in terms of when to look out for a bank, if you already know that financially your credit history or is not that great, there are other options. There are organizations like us to help you get ready so that you are ready for these guys further down the line.
So everybody in here, or pretty much everyone, is a business owner, and there's a lot of people of color in here as well. So earlier this year, the federal government released a survey that said that 52% of minority businesses don't apply for business loans simply because they're afraid of the process. That's half of our businesses that don't have the funding that they need to sustain employment and to grow. And so don't let fear be the reason that you don't move forward and start to figure out what it is in terms of capital that your business needs. And so whether you're working with the Latino Economic Development Committee or another organization, find someone that you can work with that will help you get prepared for the process and work you through the process. You may find that you're a lot stronger than you are, and maybe you don't even need their services at all. But don't let fear be the reason that you don't get the services or the financing that you need to keep your business thriving.
And can we please explain the importance of the business plan and the lending process and areas of emphasis?
Sure. One big aspect of the business plan, the importance goes back, I guess relates to what I said earlier, that the banker really needs to understand your company, especially if it's not a restaurant or something that's extremely literal and you could see it with your own eyes how they'll make all their money. So we want to get an understanding, especially for those younger businesses. If we're requiring a full-blown business plan, that's so we can understand and make a strong case for weighing in and saying, yes, we believe that within 18 months, 24 months, we believe, given this plan that you've laid out on paper and put the time in to explain the market conditions and why you think you'll be successful, this helps us justify a potential SBA loan or a small business loan to first get you up and running. And without that on paper, it's just a conversation, and it's a lot harder for us to go to our credit side of the house to justify it. So it gives examples, and it adds color to the story, basically.
This is going to kind of connect the last question with this one a bit too. You have no excuse if you're doing business in DC to not be planning for capital from day one and not having a good business plan, because there are so many amazing resources in this city for small business owners. Shout out to the wonderful SBDC. They have, they review business plans. The one in DC does, the one in Alexandria does. We have amazing LEDC and similar organizations like that can also give you guidance. But it's amazing how many terrible business plans I see too, right? So business plans that come in with projections that, Google couldn't meet, and ones that also, on the other hand, like you're asking for a $200,000 SBA loan and you're going to say you're going to make $20,000 next year, right? So like there's just the projections aren't everything in a business plan either, but like the more time you put in, the more you'll get out, right? And the more perspectives you get, the better that business plan will work for you, right? So if you're building a business plan and you don't go to 3 organizations asking for their perspective on it before you go to a bank, you're really not putting the time in. And I think if you're asking for what's the most important sections, it would be executive summary, the projections, which can be found here and there, and the market versus the product specifications. Because if you're going to start a general store without anything new and it's going to go somewhere downtown, guess what? You're not going to be very successful because Amazon's a thing now, right? So get perspectives, build it in a way that will make sense, and make sure to be chasing a business that actually does make sense, in a product that will make sense in the market as well.
And so regarding the business plan, I've seen quite a few come across my desk. I've seen some 30 pages. I've seen some close to 50, 85 pages. Can you give any sense of what a good length of a business plan would be, where someone, you get it and you feel like they've completely kind of researched their business, they understand it, and here it is?
$80 pages is a bit much. Yeah. It really depends on your industry. And so when you work with groups like the SBDC, they should be able to help you figure out what's most appropriate for your business and your industry. But the most successful ones that I've seen were less than 10 pages. Because sometimes just because the person's a banker doesn't mean they have the financial expertise to really understand that business plan. So an 80-page business plan, a 50-page business plan can be overwhelming to the banker, and it may have a lot of things in there that, rather than make the case for you, makes the case against you. So you want your business plan to be concise, and you don't need a lot of extra fluff in there.
And I'm not sure it's a terrible idea to ask the banker what they care about in the business plan, right? So that's almost why I don't know that bringing a stock business plan and thinking that's going to be a part of your loan package always makes sense, especially if you have a pre-existing relationship with the banker. You might want to get like an idea of what looking for in that business plan and sort of build your business plan around that for the specific loan package. But yeah, if anybody sent me an 80-page business plan, I would not finish that 100%.
Just one comment on that. It's a living document, so it's going to be updated. So keep revising. Get maybe the first version is 80 pages, and then find out what's important and pertinent to those folks that you're looking to invest, whether it's friends and family initially, or LEDC, or the banks, and then customize it to that. But it's a living, working, breathing document. It also keeps you, use it as for your goal setting as well. If you don't write your goals down, what are they? Dreams. So.
All right, thank you guys. At this time, we will open up questions to the audience.
I want to piggyback on some of the things you all said. I'm Ronald Hobson. Graduate of Howard University. Served in the Clinton administration, ran the 8A program, and I worked for Customers Bank, a new bank that has penetrated the market here. And I just want to piggyback on some of the things that you said. One of the things that I see in the marketplace, and I see it strongly in the African American community, are these payday loans. that they're advertising, I highly recommend you stay away from them. Because I was looking at a new deal. A client had a $90,000 loan, and they had to pay back $7,000 a month. I mean, a week. Sorry, a week. So that cash outflow was $28,000 a month. It was hurting their cash flow because they needed the money desperately, and that's what they did. Secondly, I see banks put SBA loans together. If you are, and most of us around here have labor-based businesses, if you have a labor-based business and need an SBA loan, do not get the 7A term loan. Get the cap line of credit, because as your business grows, your asset grows, and if you have a term loan, then your asset's already tied up in that term loan. So you can't grow unless you go and get another arrangement from another bank, and you can't refinance an existing debt. So very cautious of that. Cap line. If you are a labor-based business, get the cap line of credit, because as your receivables grow, so does the line of credit. We talked about the 5 C's. Capacity. I say that's the number one that allows you, it makes or breaks people. Get to know some of the financial ratios that banks use. One of the ratios that banks use is what they call the leverage ratio. And I'm going to go backwards. For every dollar of equity you have in your firm, banks like to see no more than $3 worth of debt. Okay? Let me repeat. For every dollar of equity you have in your firm, banks like to see no more than $3 worth of debt.
And it can't hurt to be lower.
Well, yeah, that's the maximum side, right? And so, oftentimes we get turned down because of that, because we're undercapitalized. So that's something that you've got to look at. If leveraging your personal assets, I've done a few startups. I don't like to do them because I'll be honest, I'm in the middle market corporate. But what we do is look at your personal assets and basically leverage that, your personal assets. If you have equity in the house, take the equity out of the home, get a CD, put the CD in the company to start the line of credit, because the CD is cash secured. If you have revenues and you have a track record, then the bank has an opportunity to see how you're going to manage that early on. And so we've seen companies that, they started out with a $100,000 CD, and it was cash secured, but at the same time, they started getting the revenues in, they started generating the earning assets, the receivables, and now they went from, $500,000 in revenues, now they're at $2 million in revenues, and then you have, about $200,000 worth of receivables. So that's how you leverage, the assets that you have personally. One other thing, and I'll sit down, finding the right bank. That is so important. As we talked, the difference between business banker and a commercial lender. Commercial lenders, we're trained in credit. A business banker is a glorified salesperson. I'm just telling you. I'm being very direct and honest with you. So find it, you have big banks and you have small banks. Big banks, sorry fellas, big banks have credit scoring. So if you fit within that box, either you're going to get the loan. If you don't fit within that criteria, you won't. Community banks, smaller banks, tend to be a little more flexible because they're thirsty for loans. So oftentimes the brand banks that you see out here may not necessarily be the right fit for you because they pretty much have that box. So if you go to a bank that's not necessarily brand, they may be a little more flexible. That's all I'm going to say on that.
Thank you kindly, sir.
So I appreciate that, and I agree with almost everything you said. I am going to give you a bit of pushback, and it's not going to be on the part that you think it is. So always weigh cost-benefit on an individual transaction based on the information in front of you. I hear what you're saying on the cap lines, and that's almost always true. But some of us larger banks are also SBA preferred lenders, which means most SBA term loans are floating with prime. We can give you fixed interest rates on SBA loans 7A, right? And so if what is most important to you is knowing exactly what your payment's going to be each month and the term of your payment, and you just want to purchase a business, get out of it, get out of the loan, and you don't think you're going to need that much, right? Then it could be for that particular transaction that a 7A loan or SBA Express loan or something like that may be the best thing for you. So it depends on the transaction specifically. And frankly, any good bank's going to have a good enough SBA analyst to tell you what the best program's going to be. But especially for a growing business, that thing's not working very well. That's why I asked for that. Yeah.
Your growth is going to be 7 million. Okay. So now that all your assets, when you go to that SBA loan, you have a blanket lien on all assets. All of
That's
them are tied up now in that one term loan.
Right.
To go to the next level, because you need a receivable-based line
Right.
to support the growth, your payroll every month. How do you go from point A to point B?
Well, SBA isn't the only option normally, right? So
Are generally undercapitalized.
right, but also we're talking about a new contract one or something like that, right? So one would hope, and again, we're talking in hyperbole basically at this point, but one would hope that the bank would have extra options. So if you go to your banker and you say, I need to make this purchase, right? Or I need it, if it's for cash flow purposes, a term loan's never the right thing, right? But if you're going into a transaction and say, I need to buy this LLC from XYZ, and then I'm going to win these contracts, one would hope that you would use your personal assets to purchase the LLC or do whatever short-term thing that you had in front of you, and then the bank would have options for you on top of that, right? Whether it be a line of credit on top of that just based on revenue, whether it be based on the contract. I mean, banks are getting, more and more interested in alternative forms of collateral and things like that. We're not really rushing to it, but it is a thing, right? SoFi, I don't know if you guys have heard of SoFi, but it's doing incredible things in the market outside of what a normal depository lender is. My only point is, you're not wrong. My only point is that sometimes, the detail of a transaction may make it more beneficial for a 7A term loan. But you're right, a lot of times.
Yes, but we're talking about just basic growth in the company.
Yeah.
Receivable base, and what I've seen in the industry are a lot of people just smacking an SBA loan on the term loan on a receivable, something that should be a receivable-based line, and
That shouldn't be happening.
Right.
That's bad advice
Yeah.
in the beginning.
But
And
that's
if
what I
if you're
see in
seeing
the
that, that's a golden opportunity for you to step in and add value to
well,
that.
that's what I do.
And so, yeah, and so like to piggyback on the comment that he had made in regards to the leverage, you mentioned equity. Sorry.
To piggyback on what you mentioned about leverage is actually a really key point. The equity component is critical on your balance sheet, which is a snapshot of where your business looks like today. It's a building block. Think of it as a little brick in a building that you're building in your business. Year over year over year, you're taking your profit margin and stacking it. Over the course of 5 or 10 years, as you build it, the more equity you have. That's what you have in the business. Now, the challenge, and I'm sure all of us have seen this, we look at tax returns, business is doing well. You know, food on the table, kids in school, nice house, nice cars, nice vacations. Revenues look good, profitability looks terrible. Why? Who likes to pay? Starts with a T, ends with axes, right? So taxes, taxes, taxes. At 39.6% tax rate, who's going to show all that profit in the business? And it's all inside the tax code. So what happens is these financials come to us bankers. We look at the numbers and say, hey, we can't lend you this amount of money. That's why the planning is so critical. Now, in the spirit of being in a college auditorium where I used to take a lot of tests, I always wanted to have the answers to the test. So here's the answer to the test. Y'all ready? Jot this down. For every $100,000 you're going to borrow on a line of credit or a term deal that's over 5 years, they're going to look at it at 5.75%. Use that for the number today. That's $1,921 a month. Round that up to $2,000. So that $100,000 you're borrowing costs you $2,000 a month. If your business is netting 24 grand a year, is that a good deal? Why? There's not enough meat on the bone, right? If your business is making 36,000, is that a good deal? So now 36 divided by 12 is 3 grand a month. Your proposed new debt, they're going to stress test it, okay? Like a line of credit is an interest-only payment, but think about getting stress tested. Like in case this deal gets sideways, how quickly can we recoup our debt? Banks don't want to recoup it, right? So this is the answer to the test, right? So 2,000 into 3 is 1.5. That's called debt service coverage ratio, right? The minimum that banks are going to see are what, 1.25 at a minimum. So don't be at the minimum. Don't give the underwriters any reason to turn it down. With that growth and that driving to like a 5 or 10% bottom line off your top line revenues will give you sufficient equity and profit to take on that and build the balance sheet like the gentleman alluded to. So aim to that. For every 100,000 is 2,000 a month, and then build your balance sheet. The more collateral you have on there, that's to reduce risk. So if you put your house on the line, whose skin in the game is that? Is that yours? Sure. Who else's? My wife, my kids, my dogs, right? Everybody's skin on the line. So my advice on that, build a business balance sheet. So you don't have to have your house or other collateral on the line. And eventually, when you grow to a certain level, maybe 10 years, 10, 20 million in revenue, the balance sheet is built up. Guess what? Maybe you can take off a personal guarantee. And that's what happens when you get into like the larger space. Now the business can stand on its own 2 feet. But you plant that seed today as a young business owner, as a budding entrepreneur, that's where I want to be, that's how I'm going to build it, and that's how I'm going to behave today. How do the big boys play? That's how I'm going to play too. So I appreciate your comments on the leverage because that didn't come up in the questions, and it's critical because that leverage is directly impacted by the capacity, which is profitability. So don't mitigate your taxes. Mitigate your taxes the best you can, but leave a little bit of meat on the bone so that you can get the finance you need the following year. So that's it in a nutshell.
Good advice. Next question. Oh, that doesn't work.
Hi, I just want to know how important is it to build a business credit file? I'm a company of one, and Dun and Bradstreet contacted me, and I'm sure there's a cost connected to that. So I'm like, I don't know if I have money to pay for that as well as everything else that I'm doing. So how important is that? Have you heard of Dun and Bradstreet?
Yeah, it is a bit of a racket. So one thing that a business owner should keep in mind versus them as a personal. So as a personal client, you have credit cards, mortgages, and so forth, right? And that's how your credit file is established. But as a business, your own vendors can say that you've paid late by 2 weeks. That goes on your Dun & Bradstreet report. So with your personal credit, you get usually 30 days to make a payment before it's considered late. Business credit's a whole nother ball game. So you could be paying your vendor on time, they're saying you're paying them late, and then that appears on Dun and Bradstreet. But just in terms of you going about building the credit, you do want to start to establish some kind of credit profile in the business name. And so you don't have to necessarily pay Dun and Bradstreet to establish a credit report. There are small business credit cards that you can start to pursue to just to start out. That way, when you do start to look at getting the larger lines of credits, term loans, commercial mortgages, things of that nature, you've started slowly to build out a credit file. But I would advise you to talk to Dun & Bradstreet to find out what is on your credit file, because there's probably one there that you may not even know about.
So as a rule of thumb, if anybody makes you pay for anything that's called credit, build your credit, credit counseling services, if they're calling you at the house, block that number. If they're knocking at your door, keep it locked. It is completely crazy in 2018 that this stuff is still going on. I think a lot of it has to do with a system built around FICO and some of these other things that doesn't make any sense at all. But we are in the environment that we're in. So you do need to know what's on your business credit file. But you don't need to pay Dun & Bradstreet to do that, right? If there are things on there that's saying this service provider has a late payment or something like that on there, and it's not real, you can dispute that yourself. You can build your own business credit. Take the $5,000 in your to his point, take the $5,000 in your savings, turn it over to your business, say, I want a $5,000 business loan line, something like that, and build it up that way. And frankly, I don't think in 2018 the business, and correct me if I'm wrong, I know in my underwriting, it doesn't come up nearly as much because we are going to be underwriting to you, to your revenue, to the collateral, and if you have a strong credit file, and there's not anything outstanding, outstanding being like anything that says it's a late payment or that's a judgment against the business itself, I've never gotten kickback that, oh, this person doesn't have a huge credit file on their business, right? It just doesn't come up as much as it did maybe 5 years ago. And don't call Dun & Bradstreet back at all.
By getting business credit cards, it'll track to your small business financial exchange, which is an Experian product or one of the credit reporting bureaus. You can, as Alex said, look to build it out that way. Use and pay it off. Use and pay it off every month so you demonstrate that behavior, and look to get increases every 6 to 12 months. Use and pay it off. Short-term cash flow needs.
And to your point real quick, on that example of using a simple business credit card, that doesn't have to cost the business owner anything. By paying it off, just like a personal credit card, that's a way that you can, kind of get in the game, build a small business credit file just in case you want or need to borrow more for the company later, and there's no cost at all. You might get a few rewards for your time. So yeah, that's a much more harmless, less intensive way that you can go about it.
First off, thank you guys for all your valuable input today. It's been very insightful. I have a question about building your business credit profile. So I recently started up an LLC, and as a part of starting the LLC, I created an EIN, and my EIN is tied to my personal Social Security number. So my question is, how am I developing a business credit if my EIN is technically tied to my personal Social Security number? That's correct. Yeah, I'm a single member LLC. No, it's not the same number, but I'm wondering, like, how am I technically building business credit if it's
like any credit, if you go get a credit card today or tomorrow, it'll tie to your personal credit history first, right?
That's what they're going to base a decision on, but then your new tax ID number is going to be associated with your business, and that's one trade line. So you use and pay, use and pay, use and pay. Year 2, maybe you've increased it. Maybe you get another one at somewhere else, whatever it may be, and you get an LEDC loan or Waycif, other lenders like that, where it creates trade lines on that number. It's going to take time. It won't happen overnight, but you are the sole LLC. You're the sole member, personal guarantee. They don't have any history of it, so they're going to look at your personal history first. And typically, small business cards, 75% of the weight's on FICO. So that's how the decision is being made.
And they told me that because I was having to a new company, that they would give me a credit card if I filed for a CD. So basically, if I
So that's
$100
so I'm very aware of that being at B of A. So what they would do, depending on, there may not have been enough personal credit history. So they say, okay, in order to build your business credit history, put $5,000 up now. You get a $10,000 line or $5,000 line in 6 or 12 months. They release it. Now you've demonstrated the history, and it's a way to encourage small businesses to build the history that way. It just depends on what the personal. It's very specific to your personal background.
Does that make sense to go after, like, putting, let's say I have stocks that I can sell that are worth $1,500, but those stocks are increasing in value at like something close to.
I wouldn't do that.
Yeah, you wouldn't sell those stocks.
I'd go make some money and put some money in the bank and get a card on it first. Let that vehicle earn for you in the long run. Complicated.
Buy the stuff.
But it's not usually a small credit card. Yeah, I mean, you would need like an underwriter, and most of the card services credit departments are so non-technical that they would overcome that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question.
That being said, if you have a lot of money in stocks, you could go in and ask for like a commercial card, which is sort of the step up from the small business credit card. That's what he was talking about. Well, yeah, this is hyperbole, but you know, that's just an example of kind of graduating to the next step, and those, you know, you have multiple users and you have employees, and they have like working needs and things like that. You can give it to them. You get one kind of master line of credit, and everybody uses against it. So just thoughts on as you grow, kind of the next step.
A commercial card though goes through traditional underwriting.
Totally, yeah.
So a commercial card goes through underwriting like a commercial mortgage would go through underwriting. A small business card doesn't. Commercial cards, usually you want to have at least 2 years of financials and revenues. So that's how you grow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Good morning. First of all, this comment. Who thought that banking could be hilarious and informative? This has been one of the best banking workshops I've ever attended. So thank you all so much. Excellent. And a follow-up question. Did all the men get on a group text and say, I'm going to wear my brown shoes? You wear your brown shoes? But didn't tell the young lady? It just did. But it was excellent information. Thank you all so much.
We have enough time for one more question. Anyone else?
Good morning, and thank you. Yes, this has been really very, very informative. I had a couple of questions that were sort of sparked by other comments that were made. You talked about being able to look at your business credit score history, and you also talked about vendors who could report you late, and it's different from if you have a personal account, and that it could be wrong. So I want to just hear a little bit more about how is this happening, and how do we make sure it doesn't happen to us? Thank you.
So, this gentleman mentioned that lenders go through commercial credit training, and part of that training is learning to go through the types of businesses that your customers associated with, right? And so, part of that is like, you know, is this business associated with a vendor that would do questionable things in general, right? So I say all that to say, be careful with who you do business with, right? If you don't get a warm and happy feeling, and if you don't have people that you associate with that are referring you to some vendors or other service providers, and you can't find a lot of good history online about them, if you can't do research on them, probably shouldn't do business with them, because these are the types of vendors that would kind of report these things, right? So there's not as many regulations on the business side of credit reporting. And so if you know, so-and-so dry cleaning says that you didn't pay them for the last time you took your business suits there or something like that, and it's from the business side, you're paying with a business card, or you even have like a line of credit with the service provider, probably not a dry cleaner, but if you have like a note with them, and you pay late, or even if you don't and you have a dispute with them and they say that you asked for a service and you didn't actually ask for this service, and they have any proof at all, or can come up with something, they can submit it to Experian, the Experian business side, and they can choose to put it on there or not. I've never seen a lot of kickback from the business side of Experian though. So yes, I mean, always, I would, if you're asking about how to check your business credit, literally, I mean, the Experian side is go to Experian Business. And I would, there's a few others that are not coming to me off the top of my head, but literally Google business credit bureaus. LexisNexis does our background checks as well. It's good to know what's on there for your LexisNexis. So, we lean heavily on Experian as well. That's the only thing. I would say, check your LexisNexis report. Check your Experian business report, and if there's anything that doesn't make sense, you better know somebody at that service provider that you can go back to that has your back, right? And if not, don't use that service provider at all.
All right, folks, that brings our small business banking panel to a close. Let's please give a round of applause for our panelists. I would like to thank you for being informative and candid in your responses. It was helpful. We've heard those comments out in the audience. At this time, I'd like to remind everyone to connect with the DCSBDC on their social media properties, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Please do that. Be informed, be ready.